So, what is a linguistic landscape? At its most basic level, a linguistic landscape refers to the visible and audible linguistic elements in a given environment. This could be the languages we see on street signs, advertisements, or posters in our surroundings. It could also include the ways people communicate in public spaces through speech, symbols, gestures, or other semiotic resources. In education, the concept of linguistic landscape has been taken up by teacher educators as a powerful tool. It helps future teachers become more aware of diversity of languages and language practice that exist in different communities, as many of them may not share the same cultural or linguistic backgrounds as their students. Hence, the linguistic landscape activity is used to create an opportunity to bridge this gap. In this activity, pre-service teachers are often asked to walk through neighborhoods, document the different languages and linguistic elements they encounter, and reflect on what this language communicates about identity, community, and power. But here is the problem. We cannot completely trust what we see, because what we see on surface does not always tell the whole story. So there are limits to surface level observation. We have to remember that linguistic landscapes are complex. Signs, posters, and language choices do not always transparently reflect the language people actually practice in their communities. So for example, the linguistic landscape of racially diverse communities often appear dominated by English signage. But that doesn't mean English is the only or even the most important language being spoken or valued within those communities. Instead, this pattern often reflects policy or process of assimilation and the dominance of English language ideologies, where minoritized languages are suppressed, hidden, or even erased. So we need to learn to critically read the linguistic landscape by asking deeper questions about what is present, what's absent, and why. So here are 3 ways that help us critically engage the linguistic landscape along the following 3 interconnected levels. 1, language focus level, 2, semiotic and contextual level, 3, critical and interpreted level. The first level focuses on language themselves. We might begin by noting which language appear on signs, posters, or advertisements, such as English, Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, and so on. But as we look closer, we also need to question how these languages are being represented. Do we see them in formal, standardized form, or in more local, informal varieties? And what about blended forms such as Spanglish, Chinglish, or African American English? Do we see them as separate languages, dialect, or something else? The first level reminds us to attend carefully to the languages on display and the boundary we draw around them. The second level asks us to think beyond words and consider the broader semiotic and textual environment. Meaning does not only come from text, it also comes from symbols, images, colors, or even what is left unsaid. A bilingual English sign at the health clinic is not just translation. It may also signal a deliberate attempt to welcome Spanish-speaking families. Similarly, the location of a sign, the visual design, or even the absence of translation can all communicate a powerful message about who is included and who is excluded. Finally, the third level moves us into a critical and interpretive level. Here we ask questions about power, ideology, and history. Who decides which languages are allowed or given visibility in public spaces? Which languages are made official? Which remain invisible? What does the absence of certain language tell us about assimilation pressures, systemic inequities, or histories of linguistic erasure? At this level, we recognize that linguistic landscapes are not neutral. They are shaped by political, economic, and social forces that influence whose voices are heard and whose are silenced. Like everything else, context matters. It is important to remember that linguistic landscape cannot be analyzed in isolation. The meaning of a sign in a school hallway can be very different from the meaning of a sign in a racially linguistic neighborhood or in a small immigrant-owned business district. Each landscape is deeply conditioned by its historical, cultural, and social context. As educators, our task is not to notice the language around us, but also to interpret and question them, connecting what we see to the community they serve, the ideology they reflect, and the power structure they reproduce.